Welcome back to the Georgia Show. I'm here with my trusty partner, Bill Quinn. Welcome, Bill.
There we go. Good evening. I just needed to make sure I was on air. It's good to see you, Todd. How you doing?
Good to see you. I think you're a little frozen, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But
we'll see.
So the curious case of First Liberty. We're going to dig into this a little tonight because there's been some kind of strange happenings over the last few days, and we just want to let you know what's going on. Nothing accusatory or anything. We just want to tell you what's been happening. So we're going to do that. So much going on in the world. We have the Iran conflict, and we may touch on that tonight. I have been in the Pentagon in the Department of War briefing earlier in the week, and just fascinating as to how this is unfolding. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've got Dr. Kelly Victory and a lot coming out on cancer. And so we're going to discuss that with her. And Bill, you got some things to talk about. What do you want to get into?
Well, we will delve into the First Liberty thing, as you said. There's been some documents filed in a couple different directions. We'll cover those. We were hoping to get some feedback this evening, but we'll press on nonetheless, and we'll ask some questions that hopefully we will be able to get some answers to over the course of time. So we'll cover that. We've got some news that may be on the horizon with Tina Peters. We'll save that for later in the show. We will talk to the news that we brought out during the week regarding Mr. Ossoff. Really, Mr. Ossoff has got some smurfing going on. And I think you've got another story that just came out in the Georgia Record regarding some money moving around. So we'll talk a little bit about that and probably a couple other surprises before we're done.
We will highlight the Georgia Record's reporting. We're really becoming the paper of record in Georgia. It's interesting. We're getting a lot of phone calls. The content is going up. We're posting more on different things across the state. And we're becoming the place to call because there's really no other free media in the state. And I think people are starting to realize that. So help us if you can. By the way, we're getting a lot of calls for advertisers. If you want to advertise with CDM or the Georgia Record specifically, or any of our other local papers, give us a call on the contact email on the site, and we'll be glad to talk to you. We're going to be at CPAC at the end of the month in Dallas. We're going to be there with our CDM Espanol team. Willie, Laura, and Sadie and the crew will be there. Kind of been in beta for a while, but we're going to really launch that hard into 2026 and into the midterms. Sign up for our no ad subscriptions. This is really important. We talk about it all the time, but go to my.cdm.press. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. A great way to support free media. And what you get is access to all of our content, which is massive these days. We do so much video. We've got a whole team. All we do is cut our videos and put out tracks later on after these shows. And it's just a lot of work, but it's a lot of content. And we do a lot of print work all over, from our 7 different regional papers to military to Hispanic to overseas to the Middle East. Just a lot happening. You get all of that content with no advertisements. And my show, The Skiff, is really blowing up too. 10 to noon, Monday through Friday, Eastern. And it's an intel brief. We're not an activist show like some of the other podcasts. We're just trying to make you the smartest you can be, whether that's at your dinner table or in your office or talking to someone at a cocktail party. You're going to know more than anyone else, and that's our goal with The Skiff. All right, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, unless you want to jump right into something, or where do you want to go from here?
Well, let's see. Did you want to have Dr. Victory up front or a little bit later on?
We can do her now. It's not that long. So
let's do that, because this goes right in line, I think, with what we talked about several weeks ago coming from Nick Hulsher, and it has meaning and bears potential for nearly every family that is listening and that can hear what we bring out. So perhaps let's start with that.
Dr. Kelly Victory, she's with the Wellness Company, and we've interviewed her many times before. Thank you for coming on, Doc. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, we were talking before the show. I had a sibling who died of cancer back when I was young, and you went through a cancer experience. What is we're hearing a lot on the turbo cancers and a lot of stuff coming out after some of the injections. What is going on with cancer in the U.S. right now, do you think?
Well, let's start with this issue of turbo cancer, because you're quite right. We've seen a significant increase in the rates of cancers across the board since 2022. Although no one has conclusively linked the mRNA vaccines to these cancers, I think it is likely that that is the cause, or at least a contributor. We are seeing these highly aggressive cancers in groups of people in whom they'd never been seen before, by which I mean things like colon cancers occurring in people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. You may well be aware that normally the first screening colonoscopy has been recommended to be done at age 50, because colon cancers prior to that were extraordinarily rare. All of a sudden, we are not only seeing them, but we're seeing them in very advanced, aggressive forms. Likewise, lung cancers in non-smokers, breast cancers at very young ages, and on and on. So there's an increase in cancer across the board. Cancer is multifactorial. There may be other things at play, including other environmental factors, but I think that the mRNA shots certainly are a likely culprit. All this said, in the years past, Todd, physicians really thought about cancer as primarily a genetic issue, one where DNA gets disrupted, misforms, malforms, or there's a genetic abnormality that puts one at risk for cancer. And those things certainly do still play a role. However, we realize now, are really understanding now, that it's fundamentally the immune system that is the first line of defense against cancer. All of us, you, me, everybody listening here, has abnormal cancer cells in them at this very moment. It's the job of a healthy, functioning immune system to recognize those abnormal cells, whether because they became injured by a toxic exposure, whether they're simply old cells that have now sort of started to fail and become dysfunctional. But it's the job of your immune system to recognize that first abnormal breast cell, that first abnormal prostate cell, and to wipe it out before it ever takes hold as a cancer. So current thinking about cancer, and certainly my own thinking about cancer after my diagnosis, was about doing everything I could to enhance the functioning of my immune system. And this means whether or not you choose to go down standard routes of therapy like surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy, these are things that you can do in addition or instead of. I would never tell somebody necessarily not to do chemo if that's what is being recommended. But I can tell you, chemotherapy is sort of the nuclear weapon. Does it kill cancer cells? Absolutely. The problem is it kills a lot of good things in the process, including your healthy immune system. So it's tantamount to using a shotgun to take the fly off the wall. You know, you'll kill the fly, but you'll leave a gaping hole in the drywall as well. And whether or not you can ever repair that hole that's left remains to be seen.
So that's a whole nother can of worms we can go down at some other point. But so what, if it's destroying the immune system, then is that why cancer, you have, they come back and after you have chemo or whatever?
Absolutely. And frankly, it's why the statistics, unfortunately, on chemotherapy are not terrific. They really don't do a lot in many cases to extend life, and they certainly don't necessarily extend the quality of life. People give up a year or 6 months doing chemotherapy in many cases just to gain some extended life at the end that's not as pleasant. So very, very personal choice. But for me, I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2.5 years ago. I made a decision not to do chemotherapy. I did surgery and radiation, but did not do the chemo that was recommended, and chose instead to double down on a course of supplements and things that would improve my immune function. And that's what led me to now subsequently help to design a product that we sell at the wellness company, designed specifically for that, for immune support in a very aggressive way. I also do other things, including not only intermittent fasting, but episodic long-term fasting. I really try to control my sugar intake. I always was an exercise fanatic, those sorts of things. But I think anything you can do to enhance that immune function without harming it. So my interest was identify all of the products that possibly have been scientifically proven, scientifically shown to improve immune function, potentially kill cancer cells or inhibit their growth, while at the same time having absolutely no risk of harm to healthy cells.
You mentioned intermittent fasting. I do that a lot, and from my caveman knowledge, I mean, it forces at some point during the fast your body to kill the bad cells to essentially eat them, right? I mean, is that why it's good?
Absolutely. So intermittent fasting, which is really sort of a misnomer, it's really a limited food window where, most people 16-8 is the most common, where you try to not eat anything for 16 hours of the day straight, and then limit your eating window, say, to 8 hours or perhaps 6 hours if you're really good at it. What that does, I do 16-8 with rare exception. It is much more the way that our ancestors ate. They didn't have access to food 24/7. They didn't eat continually. Furthermore, prolonged fasting for 24, 48, 72 hours or even more is also extremely beneficial on an intermittent basis, say doing it maybe once a month or once every 3 months, because as you said, it forces your body to go into that self-cleaning phase, what we call autophagy, where your body starts to identify dead or dysfunctional or dying cells, older cells, and gobble them up, wipe them out before they do something like become cancerous. And we really never give ourselves that opportunity in modern day living to get into that phase, that autophagy, where your body's saying, well, no food is apparently coming my way, so I'm going to take the opportunity to clean up all the dead stuff, gobble up, reuse what's reusable. You're sort of scavenging around. It puts your body into self-scavenge mode, which is incredibly healthy and actually can sort of turn back the dial on your chronologic age by not an insignificant amount.
Fascinating. Should you do, I've heard also like juicing. Is that good for you? Like going for 48 hours and just eating certain liquids or drinking?
Well, many people do the juicing as sort of a way to allow them to, quote, fast, because doing a pure water fast, taking in no calories, is tough. It's very doable, but it takes a fair amount of willpower. Some people choose instead to do just a juice fast. I don't, because I think juices are one of the worst things. They're generally very high in sugar, which is the last thing you need. Cancer in particular loves sugar. It's its food of choice, if you will. So I try as best I can to make my body an inhospitable environment for cancer. So I try to put the things in it that will give me a very strong immune system. And I try not to give it much available sugar as much as I can, because that's what cancer likes. So I'm not a big fan of juice fasting, but anything you can do, whatever cheat you need, sometimes, chicken broth, something like that, has no sugar, but gives you a little bit of sensation of getting something in, certainly helps you keep hydrated. I think that's absolutely fine. And certainly anything that can motivate you to cut back on the calories significantly for 2 or 3 days is very helpful.
Big Pharma doesn't like all this, right?
Oh, Big Pharma doesn't like anything that would keep you from buying into the idea that you need, hardcore drugs and certainly chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is a real racket. It makes a lot of money for a lot of people. The drugs are bought by the oncologists from the pharmaceutical companies. It's the only class of drugs where that happens. So the oncologists then resell them to the patient, and they jack the prices up to the patient and to the insurance companies. It's really the reason that chemotherapy drugs are so expensive, which is not to say, again, that they don't have a place choice. I'm sure there are many people for whom that's the right choice to make. It simply wasn't the right choice for me based on my very careful review of the literature. And I decided instead, as I said, that I was going to double down on the things, and I include a host of different supplements, everything from medicinal mushrooms, reishi and turkey tail mushrooms. I use berberine to help control blood sugar. I take olive leaf and oregano oil, ashwagandha, lots of things that are included in this new supplement shield, because for me, I was cobbling together 30 different supplements. I had bottles all over my countertop, and I said, there's got to be an easier way, a way to make it easier for people. And again, it's not just for people, Todd, who have had cancer like I did, or people who are at risk for cancer. It's for anybody who understands the incredibly important function of the immune system. It certainly helps you to fight off viruses and bacterial infections, fungal infections, but it clearly is the first line of defense against cancer.
So I was going to ask you about Shield, but tell us more about that. Is it a powder? Is it a pill? How does it work?
It's a two-part product. There was so much stuff we wanted to put in it that we had to do two things. It has a soft gel cap, which includes some of the ingredients, including the olive leaf and oregano oil and ashwagandha. And then it has a cocoa mix, a cocoa packet that comes in a stick pack. It can be either mixed hot with water, like hot cocoa, or it can be mixed with a cooled liquid, can be dumped in a smoothie. I dump it in plain yogurt to make a sort of a chocolate yogurt. Yeah. It includes all of the other things, including the medicinal mushrooms that are in there. Medicinal mushrooms, by the way, have been used by Asian cultures for millennia to treat all kinds of things, including cancers. They've been used heavily in the veterinary world for decades to treat cancer. And so it's really now just taking hold in the wellness community. And as you said, these are things that Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about. Big Pharma doesn't want you to know that there's a pretty easy way to help to control blood sugar using berberine. They'd rather have you on, one of their prescription medications for that. So definitely check it out. Shield is a two-part product, and I think it's really beneficial for anybody concerned about immune health.
I will do that. So last question, ivermectin. It's been shown to be very effective against cancer, right? And tell us about what the wellness company has in that space.
Ivermectin is a remarkable drug. It's been around for decades, FDA approved for use in humans since the early 1980s, despite what the FDA wanted you to believe back during the COVID debacle. It is not simply a horse dewormer. It is not just a medication used in veterinary medicine. It does have application there, but it's been used heavily on humans for many, many decades. It's taken by hundreds of millions of people around the globe every year. It's used for river blindness, obviously for intestinal parasites, but it has very well established usages now in the cancer world. It has multiple mechanisms of action by which it inhibits the replication of cancer cells, inhibits their growth. It has been used in the veterinary world for that purpose specifically, again, for decades. And now many, many studies showing its application in human cancers as well, everything from breast, lung, prostate, colon cancers. We have a product available at the wellness company that's included in our parasite cleanse, which we recommend that people do to eliminate any parasites they may have. It turns out more people than we previously thought actually do have parasitic infections that may account for some of these vague symptoms like brain fog, muscle aches, joint aches, those sorts of things. But ivermectin has really broad application there. It's also used in a topical form, Todd, and we have that available at the wellness company. Topically, ivermectin has been FDA approved for the treatment of rosacea, an inflammatory skin condition commonly on the face. But it actually turns out that ivermectin topically treats a broad range of inflammatory skin conditions and has shown great promise in treating even skin cancers. So people have had resolution of their skin cancers with topical ivermectin without ever having to go on to have surgery. So I think as time goes by, we're going to see just how remarkable this drug is. Great safety profile, almost zero negative side effects, very well tolerated, even for people who take it long term. I included ivermectin as part of my post-cancer therapy. It's one of the things that I chose to do instead of standard chemotherapy. And I've been on it for years on a daily basis with zero ill effect.
Wow. Big Pharma doesn't like that either. Dr. Victor, thank you very much for your time. We'll have you back down the road. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
What'd you think, Bill?
It's an amazing interview. The more you learn about these medications that are available today, they are inexpensive. They've been around a long time. The more hopeful people become. And we've talked in these last weeks about a bill which is right up against it right now, HB 1089. It's in play in the Georgia legislature. Many states have already made ivermectin over the counter, and we have the chance to do that. Now, is the question, are the legislators going to take action? And if not, why not? It's so simple. It's a half-page bill. The only interesting comment I got, somebody responded to us last week or the week before. Oh, but you can just order it from out of state. Well, yeah, you can. But here's the question. Why would our legislators make us order it from out of state? Why can't we go to CVS or Publix and just pick some up if we need to? Should be a no-brainer.
Well, speaking of legislation, I was going to tell you, but I forgot to mention it. Our Connecticut people, Jackie Homan up there, brought a story to me where the Connecticut legislature is trying to run through a very similar bill to I forget the name of the bill in Georgia, but the AI bill, so that you could essentially it's a way to shut down criticism of the legislature or whatever, because they don't like something. If you do, they can say you're hurting children or whatever it was. But I want to talk to you about that offline, because that is we see this often where there's nationwide application of these tactics, these vectors to shut down the grassroots.
We were very lucky, and with the help of many Georgians, to push back 986. That was the original AI meme bill, and then do it again recently. And it just makes no sense. It's modeled after a bill that Gavin Newsom has put in place in California. And to your point, it's meant to put fear in the mind of folks that otherwise might have some fun with the legislators and post some stuff that maybe they don't like, but that might be very, very appropriate. You look at what Trump does. He has no problem making fun of the bad guys. Yeah. And we should not either. So
let me ask you while I've got you, and I'm going to cut this clip and send it to Connecticut. How did you defeat that? What was the process you used?
So, well, one, I went and spoke against the original bill, and one of the sponsors spoke right after me and admitted during his testimony on video that indeed it had the potential of infringing on First Amendment rights. The points that I made in testimony before the Senate was that one, just because you see something, an image, a sound, that doesn't mean that AI is the crux of the problem. The question is, are you going to let people say something that you disagree with, or are you going to try to stifle them? Well, AI really has nothing to do with that. You could produce a good-looking reproduction of somebody and do it in many different modes. AI doesn't have to be part of it. And they tried to make it sound like, well, AI is going to make it so much worse. No, it's really not. What's going to happen is if people say something that's untrue, there's lots of other people standing out there that will point out, bring receipts and say, that's not true. Here's the receipts. Here's the truth. And my point to them was rely on the truth. The truth will always find its way out. Don't be afraid of whatever somebody wants to say. And for gosh sakes, don't prevent people from saying things because you're worried about what they might say. That's the antithesis of America. So
thank you.
They tried to get around me, but they ended up relinquishing, I think, at the end of the discussion.
So it's essentially just a logical argument in public in front of the camera so that everybody can see it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, let's pay a few bills, and then we'll be right back with more here on The Georgia Show.
Divorce is tough, but your finances don't have to be. I'm David Cross, and I'm a certified divorce financial analyst practitioner. My job is to help you get a fair financial settlement in your divorce and to guide you to smarter money decisions. Find out how we can help you. U.S. Asset Management. It's your money and your...
Wrong one. Sorry about that.
A warm welcome here at the National Press Club. Welcome to the journalists, welcome to the Embra team, and welcome to the other guests that we have here. We're going to announce, and as some of you guessed it right when they came in, the first E2 order by an American operator. And that operator is Avello. We believe this is really a strategic shift to unlock profitability for the customer. I'm very pleased that we have Andrew Levy here as the CEO of Avello, and I'm very pleased to give the stage to share a little bit more about what Avello is going to do with the E2 195. Thank you very much.
Couldn't be more excited to be here as part of this historic announcement. We have such a great cultural fit as companies, so we're very, very excited to be Embraer's newest customer. We launched our airline in April of 21, and our target is focusing on small secondary airports of large metro areas. We've carried over 8 million customers since we started on 63,000 flights. And we've done all these things with 1,200 of the greatest crew members I could ever imagine having, and many of them are here with me today. This is the right airplane for us. It's going to open up opportunities for us that no other aircraft can serve. The best thing about the airplane, of course, is you will not find a middle seat on this airplane. It doesn't exist. We won't have any to offer. It's going to be the best cabin in the United States, and we're so excited about that. This is going to elevate our experience to the highest level, and we think our customers are absolutely going to love the airplane.
So I just want to second that. I've spent a lot of time on Avello Airlines in the last few weeks. It's my easy way to get to Washington, D.C., wherever I am on the East Coast, and there's usually a connection somewhere. It's not everywhere, but they do fly a lot of places that I need to go. And the one thing that, air travel has become a brutal business, and the stewardesses are nasty. I mean, it's difficult. The seating is so tight you can't really relax. But I have found the difference with Avello is it's a family affair. I was on a flight yesterday. The stewardesses were so nice. There was a child that was screaming. They picked it up and nursed and played with the child so the mother could sleep. I mean, and that kind of rubs off on the passengers. I was getting off, and a lot of times they'll cut in front of you or whatever. But it rubs off on the passengers, and they become nicer. And it's just a much more pleasant experience. So check out AvelloAir.com. It's cheap. It's great little airports they fly out of, and I can highly recommend it. And they've been really good to us, and we want to scream from the mountaintops about Avello Air. Back to you, Bill.
All right, so let's move into this discussion about this curious case of First Liberty. We've talked about First Liberty since they announced that they were closing their doors the end of June last year. We were, I believe, the first outlet to announce and expose what was going on. Folks followed very shortly within hours thereafter, but we were able to get the jump on that. Within the following days, investigations began, as you would expect, with what looked like and has now been discovered to be about $140 million plus Ponzi scheme, is the way that the SEC and the Secretary of State are describing it. There's been a couple people that have now been sanctioned, I'll call it, for it, one of which was Brant Frost, the fifth son of Brant Frost. The other is Timothy Nathaniel Darnell. And we note this. It's an emergency order to cease and desist all violations of Georgia Securities Act. We're going to refer to the content of this document because we want to stick with a factual discussion of what this says. We're not saying that everything in here is correct. That is to be determined, I guess, by other authorities as we go forward. But we will ask some questions and draw some lines to other documents as we go through this discussion. So let's bring up this. I'm going to call out some paragraphs in that document. And I should also preface that we were contacted by folks near to Nathaniel Darnell this week, and were asked to take a better, closer look at this. And that's what we're trying to do. We were hoping to have Alex Johnson from the GRA join us. His schedule did not allow that for this evening, but we would continue to keep the door open for him to come on and talk about some of this. He had posted I guess you call it a blog. It's an article that calls into question some of the things in this emergency order. And we'll try to debut some of that as we get through this discussion. This is going to be a little lengthy, and I'm going to read you some things because it's important to keep the facts in front of this. So let's take a look here. So within that document, there's about 5 areas that we want to concentrate on, and I'm going to read this to you quickly. Darnell recognized his obligation to disclose to Bankers Life. Bankers Life is a firm that Nathaniel Darnell was actually employed with as an investment agent and so forth, and I think also as a life insurance agent. He was under obligation to disclose to Bankers Life all outside business activities that were not conducted on behalf of Bankers Life. For example, the Bankers Life 2020 annual compliance questionnaire, the following was asked: are you currently engaged in any outside business or activities, either as a proprietor, partner, officer, director of 5% or greater, shareholder, trustee, employee, agent, or otherwise, including charitable donations, if you are involved in a managerial capacity? On January 11th, 2021, Darnell completed that questionnaire, and Darnell's response to that item was no. And again, we're quoting, you can see it at the bottom, we are going directly from quotes within the emergency order document. Next, on his OBA form submitted to Bankers Life on July 25th, 2021, Darnell stated he was an officer of Persevero, I believe is how you pronounce it, Properties, and described the organization as a house flipping business. Darnell failed to disclose that his commission payments from First Liberty were being deposited to his Persevero Properties bank account. Instead, Darnell made misrepresentation of the business purpose as, this is a small business that my wife and I are looking to own, to be involved in, to primarily purchase houses, renovate them, and then either rent them out or flip them. It may involve third parties providing some capital toward these ventures, and will definitely involve hiring contractors to conduct and supervise most of the work. It may also involve providing capital and other resources to similar ventures, since most of the work would be handled by my spouse or contractors. My involvement, this is Mr. Darnell speaking of himself, my involvement would be at a minimum dealing with mostly the accounting and shouldn't take more than a day, a month of my time. This is his response to Bankers Life, the company he was employed with at the time. Darnell, further in the document, Darnell recognized that private securities transactions, i.e. First Liberty investments, were prohibited by Bankers Life. Bankers Life compliance questionnaire asks its investment advisor representatives to make the following attestation, meaning they say this: I confirm my understanding that Bankers Life does not allow participation in private securities transactions or any unapproved securities related products without first requesting in writing and receiving written permission to do so from the firm. In 2021, 2022, 23, 24, Darnell responded yes to confirm his understanding. Bankers Life in 2021 and 2022 compliance questionnaires ask the agent or rep to make the following attestation. I confirm my understanding that BLS policy to only communicate regarding securities business via electronic communication platforms that are monitored and archived. Darnell responded yes to confirm his understanding. Bankers Life 23-24 compliance questionnaire asked the agent rep to make the following attestation. I confirm my understanding that it is BLS policy to only communicate regarding securities business via sponsored and approved channels of communication, including sponsored bankers' email addresses, Teams, and my rep chat. Darnell responded yes to confirm his understanding. This means that in order to communicate to clients, you should be doing so through the tools known and utilized by, in this case, Bankers Life, so that they can be monitored and confirmed. Okay, now we get into what they talked about actually occurred in some cases. Approximately 60% of the individuals Darnell placed in First Liberty Investments were 60 years of age or older. Well, being older than that myself doesn't sound that old, but there are concerns as folks get older. Darnell breached his fiduciary duty to his clients when placing them in First Liberty by not adhering to their investment objectives and risk tolerance. Remember the words risk tolerance, because that may be the formation of one of our questions in just a moment. He placed investors into First Liberty Investments regardless of their investment objectives and risk tolerance, i.e. one-size-fits-all recommendations. That seems like a bit of a generalization, and we might question the back half of that sentence. But you'll see how this notion of risk tolerance plays into all of this. The majority of individuals Darnell placed in First Liberty Investments did not meet the federal definition of accredited investor. That's the other term that I want you to remember. Darnell often placed over 50% of a client's net worth into First Liberty Investments despite the client's stated investment objective and risk tolerance. In November 23, Darnell provided investor number one. They were not including names for most of the investors. They list them as investor number one, perhaps investor number one and his spouse or wife. So in 23, Darnell provided investor number one and his wife with a document titled November 23 Review Summary, which represented to be the values of their investments as of November 13th, 2023. On this summary, Darnell described First Liberty Investment as secure growth. He goes on to state in the analysis section that by moving their portfolio into First Liberty Investments, quote, 88% of their shared portfolio is no longer subject to any downside risk in the market, most of which receives a guaranteed 15% return. Okay. All right, let's talk about what is and is not an accredited investor. And Todd, I know you have years of background in the financial industry. Please feel free to weigh in here. I'll give my 2 cents.
You go ahead, and then I'll add something to this.
Okay. Essentially, in ensuring that someone is an accredited investor is meant to make sure that their net worth and their income is enough to grant them the ability to accept a certain amount of risk. And so they look at net worth being typically over $1 million, not including the primary residence, and income typically for an individual of $200,000 or $300,000 jointly with a spouse. Again, this is meant to make sure that people are able to choose wisely an investment and ensure that it doesn't represent an overly high, I'll call it, percentage of their overall assets and net worth. There are also other potential qualifications like, are you a professional? Do you do this for a living? And do you have knowledgeable employees and other things that might be engaged in choosing such investments? Todd, feel free to weigh in on that based on your own background, if you would.
I'm sorry, repeat that. I was checking something on the phone.
It's basically the notion of accredited investor is to ensure that someone has adequate net worth,
right,
and or adequate net income to allow them to make a choice on investments without unduly subjecting themselves to risk.
Well, you have to recognize these are essentially, and I haven't walked through the whole prospectus and everything, but well, you have to provide a prospectus. First of all, this is an unregistered offering, and meaning it's not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it therefore is much higher risk. So right off the bat, to state to somebody that it's a guaranteed 15% return and not subject to fluctuations in the market is simply not true. And that is extremely concerning. I do want to talk about how this whole thing went down this week. So finish what you want to say, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, very good. All right. So did First Liberty Building and Loan attempt or outwardly attempt to attract accredited investors? This is the reason for bringing this definition up. And here is a web website page. It no longer exists as far as we can tell. It may be available on the Internet Archive, but this was a page that was up on their website when the building and loan was still in business. And you note that in there they ask outwardly, are you an accredited investor? Now, the other thing that we found is this, and this is one of the notes for one of the loans that was given out. And actually on the note itself, down at the bottom, it says the direct or indirect ownership of this note by non-accredited investors is prohibited, which we found very interesting. This note or this page appears in the initial emergency cease and desist order that was issued right after First Liberty closed its doors. So here is something that I wanted to include. I think it's important. And it gives a sequence of a conversation, a communication between Bankers Life and Mr. Darnell. And so let me take us through this. So on October 26, 2023, a central supervisory principal from Bankers Life Security emailed Darnell about Investor One's transactions. Quote, the purpose of this inquiry is to ensure that elder abuse is not an issue with these withdrawals. The following referenced accounts had a non-systemic distribution take place. What did the client state what is as their reason for this request, if any? Did you verbally speak with a client? Wire for $151,000 on 10/18/23. Do you have any concerns over this transaction? Darnell responded, again, this is according to the emergency order issued by the commissioner, responded the same day stating in part, I did verbally speak with Investor One about the decision. The reasons he gave me for wanting to transfer the funds was that he found out about a new opportunity that he had not known about previously and that it was better than anything else anyone had discussed with him. He seemed to be fully aware and in control of the situation. So no, I do not have any concerns about elder abuse in this situation, close quote. Next paragraph. Darnell did not disclose to Bankers Life Security that he recommended the transaction in question. Darnell did not disclose to Bankers Life Securities that the new opportunity was in First Liberty. Darnell did not disclose to Bankers Life Security that he received a commission on the transaction in question. We'll come back to this. As I mentioned, Alex Johnson and the GRA issued I guess it's termed an article, perhaps it's called a blog, and I will read this as well. This first quote is from Mr. Darnell's mother. Nathaniel really believed in First Liberty, and we all trusted the Frosts, said Patricia Darnell, Nathaniel's mother. When we lost our investment, that was Nathaniel's inheritance. He wouldn't have intentionally lost his own inheritance if he had known what they were doing. I can't tell you how it breaks a mother's heart to see her son falsely accused like this. Now, from Alex Johnson, GRA chairman, says this fact is consistent, quote, is conveniently ignored by Raffensperger's office's independent and misleading attacks on Mr. Darnell with unproven claims in Raffensperger's filing and correspondence. Nathaniel was unaware that First Liberty was allegedly operating a Ponzi scheme at the time he innocently made referrals to his clients who he in good faith believed could be well served and benefited by their loan agreements. This is why he trusted First Liberty enough to recommend them to his own family members. For years, he saw First Liberty faithfully pay their interest payments on time, just like previous customers had testified to Nathaniel they had for them. So here are the questions this leaves us with. Did Mr. Darnell confirm with each, pardon me, there's a typo there, with each of his investors placed in First Liberty were qualified accredited investors? It's an open question. We don't know the answer to that as we sit here tonight. Did notes issued by First Liberty prohibit investment by non-accredited investors? We just showed you a note from First Liberty. That note speaks for itself. The emergency order states that Mr. Darnell earned 1% commissions on the investments made to First Liberty. Is 1% the usual commission on such placements, especially given their private security issuances and are not listed with the Securities and Exchange Commission? Industry experts that we consulted suggest that 2 to 5% is much more typical for these types of investments. And then lastly, what is the term selling away as used in the financial advisement industry? And we're going to go here. I won't read you the entire thing, but essentially selling away means that the agent, and you're welcome to read this on your own, refers to a prohibited practice where a registered broker, financial advisor, or associated person sells, solicits, recommends, or participates in the sale of securities or investment products that are not approved, offered, held, or recorded by their affiliated brokerage firm, also called the member firm. This often occurs without the firm's knowledge, supervision, or authorization, bypassing the firm's compliance processes and due diligence. The term is commonly associated with private securities transactions, such as private placements, promissory notes, unregistered investments, or other non-public offerings. It is strictly regulated by the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, primarily under FINRA Rule 3280. The associated person is required to provide prior written notice to their firm about the proposed transaction. The firm is to review and either approve or disapprove the activity in writing. If the person receives or may receive selling compensation, the firm must record the transaction on its books, supervise it, and assume responsibility as if it were a firm transaction. Okay. That brings us back to the questions we asked just a moment ago. What are the answers to these questions? We were hoping that perhaps Mr. Johnson could join us this evening to answer some of these. We might have even had a couple more. What we just showed you, along with those questions, does leave a number of questions to be answered. This entire circumstance with regard to First Liberty has been a horribly hurtful one for many people, hundreds of people across the country. We certainly are not in a position to point the finger at any one individual, but we think first of those who have lost money, who have been, we'll call them victims of First Liberty, and then question the processes that were followed or maybe not followed in the transactions that led up to this. So with that, back to you, Todd. I think you had a comment to make.
Yeah, so a few things. Number one, the 1% commission, there's a lot that depends on that. If it's a very short-term commission, that can be, or short-term product, that can be very high. Like if you're doing this every 3 months, and I don't know the commission structure, it would be low if it was a 10-year product, but if something you're doing, rolling it often and getting 1% every time, I don't know the background on that, so we'll leave that alone. But there are a lot of regulatory issues here. And what I saw this week was an attempt by those close to Mr. Darnell, including Alex Johnson, to say his family didn't know, which could be true, that he was lied to by First Liberty about what they were doing, which very well could be true. But when we pressed, and they wanted to come on the show and talk about all this, and we said, sure, but we want to discuss the regulatory issues, which you just outlined very nicely there, Bill. And after we asked for that, the conversation kind of went dark. And we did get an answer from Mr. Johnson saying, well, I don't know much about the regulatory issues, but I want to talk about these other things that the media is ignoring, like that he didn't know and that the family got hurt. Well, that is important, but the real meat, the material meat of this issue are the regulatory issues. and what happened there. And I felt the whole process, to be blunt, was kind of manipulative towards us. I mean, they wanted to put out a narrative when we pressed and said, well, come on and we'll discuss all of this, and we want answers, and we'll be very cordial as we always are. But we're going to ask the questions. Then the whole conversation went dark. So we have an open invitation to Mr. Johnson to come on. We understand that Mr. Darnell doesn't want to come on due to legal counsel advisement, but Mr. Johnson at the GRA can come on anytime. The door's open and discuss this, and we'd be happy to do that. There's also, there's a lot of, I guess, bad stuff that goes on in the financial industry, and people get hurt, like advisors with different products. It happens. So trying to conceal, and based on what you said in the document, they're making it look like Mr. Darnell tried to conceal this from his firm. So that leaves questions. That's really all I had to say, Bill.
Okay, very good. So we will continue to follow up on First Liberty. We believe, based on conversations with people close to the activities on First Liberty, that this is a long way from being done. And so we will continue to report on it and report on the facts and the feedback as it emerges. All right, shall we move on?
Yes.
All right.
I think I have the wrong thing pulled up here, though. Do you have anything else to go over?
Yeah,
While
yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we got word today that Mr. Raffensperger has indeed qualified as a Republican to run for governor of the state of Georgia. Why this is receiving less than esteemed reviews from the public is that there was a vote taken at the Georgia GOP convention, and a resolution was made that he would not be, their recommendation and decision was to not allow Raffensperger to be qualified as a Republican. Shortly thereafter, Josh McCoon, the chairman of the Georgia GOP, came out and said, well, I'm not going to comply with that because that would only get us in a lawsuit. So here he is. He's now qualified to run for governor as a Republican. And a lot of people are questioning this. They're now looking at it, especially given what's come out since the state convention. And they're saying, how in the heck could we allow someone that has done these things to be qualified to run as a Republican, given what we understand the definition of a Republican to be? So the other question this poses is the rules of the Georgia GOP Inc. Require that the when in session, the state convention delegates may make decisions that are binding on the entire organization, including the chairman. So why would he go against that? That's the other question that we will continue to follow up on. We knew it was probably coming, but that is the question that needs to be answered ultimately before this game is done.
Okay, so the Iran war has been front and center, obviously, and there's a lot of consternation over the whole conflict. We don't have the intelligence in front of us. I have visited and I'm on the Pentagon Press Corps. I've been in the briefing room with Secretary Hegseth and General Kane and heard, their passionate explanation of what's going on in the conflict. But we have been involved with Iran for a long time. We have special expertise. This is my book, Paying the Price: The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance. If you want to know about the fighters who've been fighting this regime for 40-something years and over 130,000 of them have been executed, then you can learn about the National Council of Resistance in Iran, which is their offshore political structure, and their plans for a democratic, tolerant Iran going forward, not a theocracy. Well, we brought on Shaheen Gabati, who I have spent time with in Paris and also in their camp in Albania. And their Paris headquarters is kind of the diaspora location where they stream satellite feeds into, they work internet feeds. They raise money with the diaspora for the operations on the ground. They have 1,000+ resistance units on the ground. And there, in my opinion, there's no need for an American armed force on the ground in Iran. So I think you'll enjoy this interview. We are known here for our access to sources on the ground all over the world, and Iran is no exception. You won't find this anywhere else. You'll get the talking heads, but you won't get the real truth. So we're going to bring that to you right now. Shaheen Gabati is a good friend of mine. I've known him for a long time with the Iranian resistance. Shaheen, thank you for your time, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me, Todd.
I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. What's happening on the ground in Iran, internally, and what is the mood on the street?
Well, obviously, we are still in the beginning of this whole thing, but obviously, people are not rallying behind the flag, far from it. But you have to remember that the Iranians have come out of a massive, massive uprising just past month. And I think what's very important is that they did not come out of this with the mood of despair. Rather, they came out of it with a mood of anger and basically rage. So, and I think that would be ultimately the key factor that will determine the future run. What do I mean by this? I think at the end of the day, what would be the ultimate factor that would change the whole thing is that the regime change, but that will come by the Iranian people and the organized resistance. And based on what we saw, not only in January, but also what happened after during the funeral processions and after the grief of the families, and especially in the ceremonies that are traditionally held when somebody is dead in his 40th day or hers, to that effect. The mood was totally mood of rage and people basically trying to take revenge, and I think that's the key element from inside Iran that one has to bear in mind, that and we saw this. And in the meantime, the activists of the Iranian resistance have taken major undertakings. For instance, just 8 days ago, Monday, February 23. 250 freedom fighters of the Iran's Liberation Army attacked the compound of Ali Khamenei, who was still alive at the time, in the heart of Tehran. 100 of them were killed or arrested, but 150 of them returned safely back to their bases, which clearly shows that there is a massive resistance movement inside Iran, on the ground, prepared to take massive undertakings to, as I said, would ultimately bring down the regime with the popular uprising.
Let me interrupt you there because I want our audience to understand that's really important, because you had 250 fighters in the resistance attack Khomeini's place of residence, correct? There was 8,000 guards approximately on the IRGC, and it was a battle, right?
Yes, there was a battle. Actually, 250 of them, and you have to remember this was the most protected place in whole Iran. But these brave fighters, charged at that place, and there was battles, as a result of which 100 of them either lost their lives or they were taken as captives. But 150 others, basically were able to return back safely. Out of those 100 so far, they have provided names of 42 of them who are either, as I said, killed or taken captive to the UN authorities. So, as I said, a lot of this is now becoming much more clear about what happened. Among them, incidentally, were 2 cameramen who were there to take video of the operation, and they were both professional cameramen who were there solely to take videos, and they were arrested. So, yes, it was a major undertaking, and one has to keep in mind that in such an atmosphere of repression, such a brave undertaking, a massive undertaking, takes a huge logistical network inside the country and massive popular support to be able to pull something up like of this magnitude.
So, how many people were killed in the uprising? There's numbers all over the place, from 3,000 to 30,000 or higher. What do you think?
It's very difficult to say, but definitely in thousands. I mean, there has never been an assertive number. As you said, there have been a wide range of numbers discussed. But the fact of the matter is, there were thousands of people killed, and at least 50,000 others were arrested. And one has to keep in mind, if one reviews the names and details of the victims, you can see people from all walks of life, all age groups, all ethnicities, all over the country. It clearly shows that the sentiment for regime change by the Iranians is not limited to one particular sector or only intelligentsia or one part of the country. Rather, it has become a totally nationwide desire and sentiment. As I said, in all 31 provinces, literally teenagers and people as old as 70 plus years old. In some cases, grandfathers and their children and their grandchildren went out together, knowing that their life is on the line. But that shows that how the sentiment for regime change is spread throughout the country, despite all the regime's propaganda.
So, Iran is a very diverse ethnically country, and there's been a lot of talk of there's going to obviously be continuing pressure on the regime over several weeks, if not months, and there's been suggestions that the country could break apart in different areas. What do you think of that theory?
This simply is not going to happen. Basically, because first of all, Iranian ethnicities never want separation. They are not secessionists. They are proud Iranians. All they always demanded was their rights, which is their rights. Actually, their rights are very much been observed and respected and underscored by the program of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, and particularly the 10-point plan that Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, has articulated for the transitional period. And they very much welcomed it. And also, one has to keep in mind that they are very much against going back to monarchy because they were repressed under monarchy the same way they are repressed under theocracy. So basically, what the Iranian ethnicities, which by the way comprise like 35 to 40% of the Iranian population, demand is just their rights. And as I said, this is very much recognized in the 10-point plan of the presented by Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The party that has been propagating this concept that if the regime goes, there would be some calls for secession, or Iran would be chaos, or Iran would be divided in several countries, have been the mullahs and their proponents and their advocates and their lobbyists. This has been one of the main, I would say, talking points, trying to justify the policy of appeasement and placating, pretending as though the mullahs are the saviors of Iran, which is totally false and quite diametrically opposed to reality. And again, as one could see during the recent uprising, ethnicity is very much in it, like other parts of Iranians. I mean, and as you said, Iran is a very diversified country in terms of ethnicities. You have Kurds, you have Baluchis, you have Azeris, you have Arabs, but they're all united in one thing: they both reject monarchy and theocracy. And regarding what the future will hold, Todd, I can tell you, as Madam Rajavi said the other day, that the death of Khamenei means the end of tyrannical regime. It will mean the end of this religious theocracy. And it clearly is a sign that Iran is ushering in the era of freedom and popular sovereignty. So I think we are, after 120 years of battling for freedom against the Shah, his father, Khomeini, who established this regime, and Khamenei, who was, who just died a few days ago, we are on the doorstep of a very different Iran, an Iran which will be democratic, will be free, will be a republic, a very different Iran that people have seen for generations.
So you mentioned how many the theocracy is a Shia theocracy. Is the killing of him? How is that impacting the population and the diaspora, like in Bahrain and elsewhere? The Shia.
Well, I think a lot of people realize that this is a clear sign that the end of the regime is very much in sight. You know, this whole regime is built around the concept of one supreme leader who quote unquote gets his credence of being purportedly the representative of God on earth. And the way this regime's constitution is written, that basically he's the ultimate power broker, and every major decision regarding a state will be made by him. And it has created such a huge vacuum that no one can fill these shoes. I can tell you, no matter how the regime tries to depict it, everybody realizes that this mantle would not be filled. And and as I said, the end of the regime is very much in sight. This is the end of this religious theocracy. It's quite discernible, quite visible, and I think the question is not if this regime will be overthrown. Now the question is one thing and one thing only: when it will be overthrown, and how it will be overthrown, and then what comes next after it's overthrown. I think these are the three major questions facing the international community so far as it pertains to Iran. The question is no longer that whether this regime has, durability, does it have much, life ahead of itself. These are not the issues anymore.
Last question. We have been active across the Middle East, trying to support the Christian community, just from my heritage. There's a huge Christian community in Iran, correct? How are they dealing with all this, and will they be protected in the future, do you think?
Absolutely, they will be protected in the future. I think, first of all, you see, the religious minorities in Iran have been doubly suppressed. They have been deprived of some of the most basic rights to practice their religion. I think a lot of your viewers might be surprised, maybe not, that a lot of pastors and bishops in Iran have been killed over the years by this regime, simply for insisting that they have the rights to practice and advocate their views. So this regime have been a very much enemy of not only Muslims, not only Shiites, not only Sunnis, but also Christians and Jews and all peoples of belief. And in the future, I think you might know that in the 10-point plan of Madam Mariam Rajavi, who is the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran for a transitional period to return the power to Iranian people, it's been stipulated that there would not be any, religion would not be an issue for discrimination or privilege. And every person is protected, and everybody has the right to practice their belief. And this is not only for religious belief, but also, personal belief. So there will be freedom of association, freedom of thought, and as I said, there will be an absolute freedom, which is, by the way, the right of every Iranian. It is a gift that the God has bestowed upon every human being and has been taken away from 90 million population by the criminal mullahs.
Right. Shaheen, thank you. I really appreciate your time, my friend, and hope to see you again soon.
Looking forward to Todd, and thanks for having me. These are very, very important period in history of Iran. As I said, after 120 years, I think we are on the cusp of a major, major historical change in Iran, which, again, I have to reiterate, will be done by the Iranian people and their organized resistance. This is the ultimate solution.
Thank you, my friend. We'll talk again. Cheers.
Looking forward.
Okay, Bill. Have you got anything else?
So we have reported in previous weeks again and again and again about the dastardly conditions that under which Tina Peters continues to be held in Colorado. She's now up to 516 days, I believe. One of our colleagues, Ash Epp, out in Colorado, has been following the story and keeps reporting on it. Here's something that she brought out just today. Same statute, different outcomes. And you can follow Ash via our Colorado digital property. Todd, you can give them an ad if you'd like.
Yeah, the Colorado Free Press. We run to the sound of the guns at CDM. We opened this paper because we essentially thought that the situation in Colorado was not free and there was no voice. So we opened this paper several years ago, and Ash has done a fantastic job in bringing out and reporting directly. She's often in the courtroom and in Denver or wherever it is. So big shout out to Ash Epp and the team at coloradofreepress.com.
Right, doing an amazing job. I had the chance to compare notes with her earlier, and indeed she has direct contact with Tina Peters' team and is getting updates as to what happens. What is interesting is that in a conversation last week with Peter Tickton, who's the lead, if you will, on Tina Peters' legal team, the subject of whether the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, would take action came up. And there was a feeling that he might. Well, very interestingly, I believe just today, this came out. So Tina Peters' account posts, "Thank you, Governor of Colorado, for recognizing the disparity and injustice done to Tina Peters and the courage to acknowledge it." And it says right here, she's been incarcerated now 517 days. And Trump, in just the last 48 hours, said, "Free Tina Peters now." Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, posted this. Last week, former state senator Sonia Jacques Lewis was sentenced to probation and community service after being convicted of 4 felonies, including attempt to influence a public official. She made a horrible mistake and she was wrong. I hope she learns from this and can rebuild. By posting this, he is sending the message because Tina Peters was convicted of much the same thing. And so he seems to be telegraphing a sensitivity to Tina Peters' situation. We hope and trust that he is considering and will, in fact, take action. And we believe that he probably needs to. One of the pieces of feedback that Ash shared with me is, the feeling about Colorado really across the country is it's become nothing more than a comedic meme. Everything they do seems to be the wrong thing. And if Mr. Polis has any aspirations for the future, that needs to be repaired because right now he owns it. And so by taking proper action, perhaps, even though it's been a long time coming, perhaps he sees a path to repairing his state's reputation and perhaps a bit of his own. For whatever reason, we hope that he takes the proper action and frees Tina Peters in line with the right thing to do, but also the presidential pardon that she has released, that she has received from Trump himself. So we will continue to report on this and highly recommend that you continue to monitor the writings of Ash Epp in her Substack and also on Colorado Free Press to learn the latest on what's happening in Colorado. And we thank her for all those efforts.
Yes. All right. I think we're all the way through. I'll be back on the skiff tomorrow, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday, Eastern. What else, Bill? You got anything else?
That's it. We will see what happens in the coming days, and we'll be back with you on Sunday at 2.
Great. See you then.